you want to be project managers, these are the people that you put there because the project will be delivered on time, on schedule, on budget, you know? These are the people who are like
Dr.
Mulenga.
Story, but maybe on time. Budget is a good
Not to forget of high quality.
High quality,
yeah.
you know?
Okay, yeah,
Exactly.
we'll give them the high quality. We'll give them the high quality. Okay, man, it's 6 p.m., so let's get started. Before we get lost in our conversation, 10 minutes from now, we'll still be talking. Okay. We need to give the doctor enough time so she can answer all the questions and tell her story end to end. No disruptions.
Definitely.
That's what the public wants. So to get it right into it, guys, my name is Dan Mukosovias. I'm a host for Ordinary Extraordinary. So welcome, everybody. It's very exciting to have you. We've had 2 doctors now in a row who've gone into business. Very interesting story, very interesting upward, sideways pivots we're going to tell. Yeah, so like I said, Dan Mukosa, I'm very passionate about executive coaching, really looking forward to getting leaders to really close the gap between performance and potential, specifically in the operations area, something I'm really passionate about, really driving operation excellence. In fact, my coaching has got this kind of brand, this unique brand called Operation Excellence. That's what I've called my coaching.
No, fantastic, man. Good evening, everyone. My name is Manda Ramutumbu. I am a consultant, and I like all things that, big, hairy, scary problems that need solving. Do that and help our clients. Tech, management, consulting. By the way, Dan, one of the area that I fall into is ops transformation. So, so I guess we're the operations guys. But tonight I get to do one of the things that I enjoy, which is helping people grow, and excited about our guest tonight. Looking forward to a story.
Fantastic, Manda. Before we just get obvious into the story, just some housekeeping. It is a webinar, so you get to hear the 3 of us speak and you guys get to listen. So this is one of the shows which teaches you to actively listen because you have no choice. And not really talk.
We teach listening skills for free.
Yes. Like this is
if
practice.
It's a growth area for you.
Especially for those husbands, when your wife says you don't actively listen, quote this show and come and say, guys, I listened to these guys for an hour without saying a word. That's real active listening. That said, guys, it is interactive. So we want you to chat in the chat box, really get it popping, put anything you find interesting, which resonates to you, put your context, your story. If we feel that it's adding to the story, we'll bring it in. We're actually reading whatever you guys are actually putting in the chat. And make sure you put your questions in the Q&A. We've had some doctors, a couple of doctors, and you do know all the doctors who come as mad. So if you want to find out how Bushiri left, put it in the Q&A. Dr. Mulenga will give you an answer. She's probably figured it out. She can figure out how viruses actually spread. I mean, really, Dr. Bushiri's story is easy. She'll nail it. Yeah, so please put your questions in the Q&A. And also we are live on YouTube on the Bitech channel, and follow us on our Facebook page, Ordinary Extraordinary.
Yeah, and the last thing to say is we don't have any commercial interests when we do this, but we are grateful for our sponsors, Bitech Africa, for actually allowing us to use this their Zoom platform. And I know that they also do these things. They also facilitate webinars, right? On behalf of clients. So if you want to host webinars, certainly you can speak to them as well, and on the YouTube channel for broadcasting all the content that we have.
Fantastic. So, Manda, introduction. Or maybe actually let's reiterate again, guys. We do this to really focus on career pivots. the intent is to get to really inspire people, make sure that we can actually give you the nuggets through storytelling around how you can, pivot your career upwards, sideways, and also take the leap of faith. I think the speaker we have wants to do all three. She hasn't done all three yet. She's done two of those kind of levers. Looking forward to even just talk about, maybe before at least you end, Doctor, I'm actually challenging you, just talk about your intent on future of probably just your aspiration, which I guess she's already kind of done. You're going to hear in her story. She has been an entrepreneur before, but very good lessons I think she's probably learned, and looking forward to kind of her story going forward. So in introduction, and we say every time we do the introduction, we don't go to the bio because she will tell the bio for herself. We just talk about kind of the personal interaction. So the good doctor, I met her 2-3 weeks ago. So she's one of the few people probably we haven't met in a couple of years. And it was at a drive-by baby shower, if you figure out what that is. But it was a drive-by baby shower. And we met, and my interaction with her, or my introduction to her, was around the webinar. And in the first 5 minutes, man, she told me her story. And guess what I told her? I said, you are next. And by the time I was actually telling her, because we already had that doctor, Rose Phillips.
Rose,
I said, we already have a doctor coming next week. You can come after the doctor. We need to hear these stories because we've had a lot of bias to quite a lot of engineers and technical people, because obviously me and Manda are engineers. So it's very nice to actually see that it's not just the technical people who do the sideways view. And she was very excited. She heard about it. She kind of sort of had been told about kind of what we're doing. So here she is 2 weeks down the line. She's here to tell her story. Very exciting, very juicy. I mean, just the introduction today, I was like, hi, Lisa. She's like, hey, man, there was drama today. I was like, yeah, we need that drama.
Dan, So I should tell you something. So one of my colleagues, I think she's on the line, right? So when we announced Lisa last week, she sent me a WhatsApp message, and I'm going to do it verbatim. She says, Dr. Mulenga, she does this, this emoji, like 3 times. She's like, I'm ready, She says, she sounds like the doctor version of my economist self. So you see, there are lots of people who are ready, to be hearing your story.
Good. So, Doctor, we've already talked a lot. We had given ourselves a 5 minutes timeline. We already passed that.
Hey,
please take it away and tell us your story. Where did it all start? How did you get to where you are currently?
Oh, wow. Thanks so much to the both of you. And I'm really humbled. And I'm thankful to be part of your seminar, your webinar series. And yeah, like you said, 3 weeks ago, I didn't think you were actually serious. I thought you were joking with me, but here we are. And I'm happy to share my story on this platform. I don't even start from.
So continue it as a braai conversation with the wine. Obviously. Continue
it as a Maybe I can start where I am right now. So currently I work at Genesis Analytics. This is an economics-based consultancy firm, and it's one of its kind in Africa, and it happens to have a health practice. And this is where I work as a principal in the health practice. But at the same time, I am the director for Bill and Melinda Gates funded program. My passion, for those who know me, would be HIV and AIDS, both prevention and treatment. So this program looks at HIV prevention essentially, but focusing on medical male circumcision. So I direct that program. I provide technical assistance to the National Department of Health. So how did I get here is the essence of this webinar. I'll start from probably when I left school. I'm a St. Mary's girl, St. Mary's Maramba in Livingston. So a shout out to all of my classmates back in the day. So I graduated and was accepted at UNZA, but all excited. I was meant to be.
Did you tell people what UNZA is and what St. Mary's
Oh, of course. I'm sorry. That is the University of Zambia. UNZA.
You must be careful, because sometimes we just try and extrapolate to the nearest meaning, UNZA, Kwanzaa, and we might just lose the meaning. So thank you for clarifying.
Yes, it is the University of Zambia. So I was meant to be studying economics. So one friend of mine and I were looking through the newspapers, and we came across an advert for scholarships for, in the medical field. So we decided, let's just fill them. We had nothing else to do after all. We filled them, and I was called back and she wasn't, unfortunately. So maybe there was some luck there. But she did go ahead and go to the University of Zambia and had her career done. So once I applied, I was surprised they called me back. At that point, you can imagine my dad was excited. He's just thinking one less child to pay school fees for, because this was a full scholarship to study medicine in Germany. At that time, when the scholarship came through, it was just after the fall of the Berlin Wall. So the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, and that symbolized the reunification of East and West Germany, the end of the Cold War as we know it. So exciting times historically, but very challenging times for me, who had to, at the age of 18, pack my bags and go to Germany. I recall it was a difficult moment because, I rarely saw my mother cry, but at the airport, my mother basically broke down, which was quite emotional, and wished me well. So I landed in Berlin and went to, first of all, study the language in a small town in East Germany called Quedlinburg. You can imagine at that time, there weren't many Black people in Quedlinburg. So I had to overcome curiosity from the Germans themselves, but also some discrimination. And, back in the day, around the time of when the wall came down, you had your neo-Nazis roaming the streets. So as a Black young woman, you had to be careful where you found yourself. So I managed to go through my language course, which also entailed A-levels, and moved on to the university in Berlin. And I was at the Humboldt University in Berlin, and Berlin was so exciting for me. It was this big cosmopolitan city that I had to navigate myself through. So studying in Berlin also was interesting. Not only were there language challenges, but also, like I said, there was a lot of issues to deal with. I remember one of my professors in physics telling me that, first of all, you're a woman, you won't get physics. And on top of that, you're Black. So you might as well just give it now. So I was quite determined then, told that. I was determined to ensure, not that I was going to get 100% in physics, but at least I was going to pass it. And I managed to do that.
So is this a professor, a lecture at varsity telling you upfront, you're not going to make it because you're a woman and you're Black?
Exactly. There were no mincing words. There were a lot of incidents. People would use the N-word, loosely, or ask you whether or not, you have houses where you're coming from. But I think anybody who went to Europe around that time had the same challenges. So made it through, graduated. And of the three of us who went to study medicine, I'm the only one who came back home, because I did, my passion at the time had been HIV and AIDS, having been in the club at St. Mary's, and also having been affected by losing relatives and friends to the disease. I just wanted to see if I could make a dent. So we came back and went to do my internship at UNZA, at UTH, University Teaching Hospital of Zambia, which is the tertiary and academic hospital in Lusaka. And that was interesting.
It's equivalent to Baragwana.
Yes, equivalent to
Baragwana. Okay.
And first of all, I went through a lot of teasing because all of my pronunciation was German, because I studied in German. So my laugh at me when I would say
like that in 7 years changed.
It was my pronunciation of the medical terminology with of a Latin German twist to it. So that was one of the things I recall. But I was part of the cohort of doctors, the 200 doctors that were fired, because we went on strike in, I think it was 1999, where we were looking for better working conditions, basically conditions of service, and better pay as well. But we also wanted improvement in the hospital services for our patients, because you can imagine that was the height of the HIV and AIDS crisis. We had patients on the floor, we had full wards, we hardly slept. One of my traumatic experiences actually was every day in the pediatric ward. The first task I had was to certify babies that had passed away overnight, and quite traumatic, and having to relate news to their families. So, so once we were fired anyway, it took a while for the president to call us back, but we went back and we had to redo our internship, which I did, but I kind of lost faith in the system as it was. So I thought, let me try out private practice. So I went and worked for a few private clinics. And here I want to mention particularly Muti Clinic, Muti Medical Center, because it was run by Dr. Dorothy Kasonde, who is one of my mentors. She had faith in me when I was a junior, relatively young doctor. I joined her practice, and that week when I joined, she left for some conference in Paris, and I had to run the clinic on my own. I was so scared. You know, she was quite a well-known clinic, quite accomplished, and she left it to me. But luckily, the clinic didn't burn down. No one died. So I managed to survive that. And she mentored me quite a lot during the 2 years or so that I was with her. So she taught me the value of being professional, working hard, valuing family. And also she said, Lisa, don't stop reading, always learn. So I'm generally a learner. So once I left Muti, well, I actually got pregnant and had a baby. And I thought I'll be a stay-at-home mom for a while. But lo and behold, 2 of my friends knocked on my door and said, Lisa, let's buy a clinic. I said, oh my God, we're buying a clinic. So yeah, we ended up buying a clinic. And that's when I became an entrepreneur. I actually hired people. I actually ran a facility and hoped to make profit, but it was a while before we could make profit. I remember the early days, I would do all the night shifts between myself and my colleague. It was hard. We hardly got paid for the first probably 6 to 8 months. I had no money to put into the business myself when I was approached. So there was additional pressure because you had to put in as a shareholder, your share of investment. So it wasn't so easy, but it was a trial and error time, but we had fun while doing it. And we grew as business women and also as just women in general. We had to rely on each other, and we supported each other and just tried to make it work. So,
so this was a group of women who were running this clinic.
Yes, 3.
Wow.
Water clinic.
Wow. Wow.
We bought it from a very renowned pediatrician in Lusaka, Zambia. So there was pressure to continue seeing their patients and maintaining the type of care that they were used to. So that's what we did. And then I decided after a couple of years, I said, listen, I'm running a clinic. I really need to learn more a bit about public health and how the system works and how we're going to navigate ourselves. So I applied for a master's degree in public health in South Africa. I applied at UCT and I applied at WITS. So yeah, I got the UCT regret first. So I cried for 3 days. I was devastated that UCT had rejected me, but they had said they were full and they prioritized obviously South African students. I recall that day because I was sitting with a group of friends who were kind of like a support system, and I just broke down saying that, you know, my life is over. What am I going to do now? But 3 days later, WITS responded and they accepted me. So I stopped crying and started negotiating with my husband and my family how we were going to do this because I really needed buy-in from my husband because he was going to remain with the 2 young kids that we had. When I left, my daughter was just 6 months old and my son was about 1.5 years. I still harbor things of guilt for having left them at such a young age for about 8 to 10 months. Yeah, but I had a good system. My sisters and my mother were there to help my husband out. Yeah, and he said, well, go and just make sure you pass because then, yeah, it was going to be a problem. So that's how I found myself at WITS doing a master's in 2008. And it was interesting times, good debates. But what struck me with being at WITS and how I got my first job in public health working for an NGO was that I was sitting next to another doctor, and she just happened to look over and said, you know what, Lisa, I've been watching you over the months and I like the way you work. You've got quite a strong work ethic and your debates in the lectures have been quite stimulating. I need a project manager for this this program that's suddenly been funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, which is part of PEPFAR. And that's how I got my first job. I mean, I happened to be sitting in the right place at the right time and being having been noticed by this lady, Dr. Friend. She's my friend today, and she has continued to support me over the years. So I got my first job working for Catholic Medical Missions Board as a program manager for their HIV prevention program, which went very well. So based on that, I would say a lift from my colleague, I was able then to get onto other jobs and rise as a program manager, and eventually became a program director and directed my own programs. So I also had worked for 3 years with the funding organization, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Pretoria, CDC. And that was very interesting for me, because then I understood what lens funders see through when they're looking at who to allocate funding and how much and so on. So that was a great experience. But after about 3 years of working with the funder, I thought, now that I know what I know, let me go back and implement again. So I worked for two big NGOs, international NGOs, as a director for their health services, particularly focused on HIV prevention. So that's when something else got into me as a learner. And I thought, you know what, as I progress in my career, I have to deal with a whole lot of money that is entrusted to me. And I have to manage budgets. I have human resources. I have to make a profit in most instances. And I have to make sure I do everything at a cost, in a cost-effective way. So all of that then, comes down to, you need to be a business manager. So I decided to go and do an MBA, believe it or not. So I went to do an MBA at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, GIBS. It's part of the University of Pretoria, but it's located in Johannesburg, in a suburb called Ilovo. I think that was the worst, not the worst, but the hardest thing I've had to do. Again, relying heavily on my husband, because he still had to look after the kids while I studied. And it was tough hours, it was demanding. I had to quit my job halfway through because I couldn't do both. It was pretty taxing. And yeah, I managed to see that through. I was devastated though, when they got back to me and said, you need to make revisions to your thesis. I said, what? Why? And my thesis obviously was health. It was based on a health topic, and business schools, they don't do well with health topics. So to find a business angle with that, and I chose leadership. In fact, my thesis was on servant leadership, of which I'm passionate about. So yeah, that's how I completed my MBA. And lo and behold, I got to know about Genesis Analytics through my MBA, and they had a program that they needed a director for. So they reached out to me, and I didn't hesitate at all. I took everything on board and said, yes, I'm coming through. And that's where I've been since. I've been running this program for 2 years now. So that in a nutshell, in a very summarized way, is how I got here.
Good. I think it's a good start, and just to really put it and to be clear, for Manda who likes panting about UCT, hopefully you're glad that you didn't go to UCT, because look at how kind of your life turned out. I bet if you're going to UCT, things would have gone the wrong direction.
We lost.
Knows, right?
We lost. We lost.
I'm telling you, God knew what he was doing.
Actually, as a UCT alumni, I'm going to write as a concerned alumni, or how can't you spot such talent? I'm going to lodge a complaint.
Anyway, Doctor, there's a lot of questions, right? I want to start with the fundamentals. By the way, you need to convince your husband she's coming to power, because he should really come and join us, in our next Women's Month, because that's bravery right there. Like, that's some tough cookie kind of stuff. Because I can imagine coming from a conservative environment, your wife is leaving you with the kids, and she even does it twice. I mean, my wife is doing an MBA right now. And I'm getting it. Like, I'm getting it for my family, because Saturdays and Sunday I have to be babysitting. So I can imagine for somebody who's actually done it twice, that's quite brave. Yeah. But maybe what I would want to go into is that, look, there's been this HIV thing which has been lingering, which you've kind of sort of alluded to it. And there's this journey you've moved from probably a prestigious degree, which we probably honor in the African culture. I mean, medicine is the thing, right? It's like law and the engineering and stuff. Just take us through kind of the journey of literally being able to sacrifice, a movement of sacrificing from practicing as a medical doctor to start moving away to actually going into some form of business and managing business. What was that thought process What are the mechanisms which allowed you to pivot in that way?
Yeah, good question. It was very hard to pivot, like you said, being a doctor, and everybody thought I would go and specialize in some, fancy, nice specialization like surgery. Dr. Kasonde, my mentor herself, said, "You're chickening out. Why are you not going into a clinical field?" I said, "Well, I want to help people more at a population level. I want to be at a policy level where we try and influence policy and create policy that will benefit the masses rather than me benefiting a patient at the bedside." Not that there's anything wrong with that. I really enjoyed that work and I think it's beneficial. But in my mind, I wanted to make a bigger impact. It was hard. My dad also was a bit skeptical because he thought, well, you'll be an obstetrician or something. But and I have a cousin. My cousin is a plastic in the UK, so you can imagine the pressure. So, and I said, no, I'll leave the clinical stuff for now. I'll try it out later, and that's really how I got into this type of work, as in looking at health systems and looking at health policy.
But tell me now, I mean, you say that your transition was trying to have a bigger impact, right? And didn't you feel like did you know that it was going to be less about doing the clinical work and more around sort of the management and leadership type of work?
I didn't know it would lead directly to leadership. I think the leadership came later as I progressed in my career and had to take on more responsibility. But in fact, leaving the clinical work was difficult. I used to fly back to Zambia just to see my patients because I was so guilty of just having dropped them, gone off to do my studies. So sometimes I'd call my colleagues and my partners at the clinic, like, listen, I've got 2 weeks. Let me just come and see some patients so that they can know that I'm there. But it was difficult. And as I then started working in South Africa, I actually had to give up the practice. It wasn't really fair for me to allow my partners to continue working in the practice while I'm focused on something else. So we had a very adult, emotional discussion with my partners where we agreed that I would step away. And luckily the clinic has gone on to do fantastic things with my partner who's still running it. So that was a hard decision. Getting into leadership, I think I got a bit frustrated with the poor decision-making in the health system. A lot of decisions, had people put thought to it, would have resulted in better health outcomes. So I thought, how do I influence that? How do I ensure that we get better health outcomes with the little resources that we have? So that's what got me into leadership. And specifically for my MBA, I was just basically frustrated with the state of most African countries. There's a lot of corruption, misuse of money. And I was thinking to myself, whatever happened to a leader who places their followers first? What's wrong with thinking about others, placing them before you? And I was always passionate about helping people, about, uplifting people, just empowering people. So that's what led to me focusing on that, on that leadership philosophy. And while I did my desktop research, I got to know more about it. And believe you me, through servant leadership, you can achieve the same thing as through transactional leadership, or, you don't need to have the type of leadership that's command and, instruct and shout and be a bully. So sometimes you need to take yourself back and just be a bit more, I think, compassionate about how you deliver your directive as a leader.
I'm funny enough that this is now me driving my own agenda. I do a lot of coaching. There's an executive I'm coaching who's doing servant leadership in their MBA. I don't understand, what's your definition of servant leadership yourself?
Well, my own understanding of servant leadership is to serve first and foremost and put others' interest before my own. And I also think that you can achieve a lot in collaboration. It has to be a responsible type of leadership. You have to give everybody a chance to speak out. And through that, you can, or debate your ideas and so on. But through gentle facilitation, persuasion, and guidance, you can come to a point of conversion and then you can come to a point of agreement.
And tell me, look, one of the things that I've always reflected on, and particularly being an engineer, I found that a lot of professions do not teach you around the leadership aspects, the management aspects. So there's a lot of focus on the technical aspects of how you do your job. But when you start getting into the real world, it's really a very different field. Now, you have left a clinical environment where maybe you could observe other people, you could learn on how they manage, how they lead. Now you come into sort of this program management environment where it's management and leadership on steroids. Didn't you feel inadequate, coming into that new space?
Yes, I actually did initially, very inadequate, and I was seeing things through the lens of a doctor. Obviously, we were not taught to manage a lot of things. We were taught to manage a patient holistically. Mm-hmm. Now, having had to deal with managers or your direct reports who are disgruntled, no one taught us that in med school. And then suddenly you've got a big budget and CDC wants to understand where the money went and how you used it. You have to analyze that. You have to also look at cost effectiveness. So all of those things were intimidating to me when I branched out. But I had good managers along the way who were patient enough to teach me. And that's one of the reasons why the MPH was important. But in between the MPH and an MBA, I also did a health management course, and it was a diploma, just to get to know in a practical sense, how you manage a program. So how to look at financial statements, for instance, how to plan for HR, your team, what type of a team do you need to get the job done? Even how to interview. No one teaches you that. How are you going to recruit? How are you going to, identify gaps in your team? All of those things are important, and they were quite daunting when I first started. But yeah, it's, I think sometimes you just have to say, challenge accepted, let me go for it.
I have a question. It's going to be a combination. Oh, Manda, you want to ask?
I just wanted to make have a follow-up question, right? Because, and it's one of the things that people who love learning, seem to do. So to get any skill, I see this pattern where you go deep, right? So you have to do the course, you have to do the studies and, get immersed. And I'm just wondering, what led you into that direction? And would you now, in hindsight, having gone through all of that, are there other ways which are a lot more efficient to get those skills and to get that knowledge?
Yeah, very difficult question in a way. I would like to say that you can get the knowledge through experience, especially if you have good tutors or you have good managers that would teach you that. But I've learned from my experience that doesn't always work. You have to have the papers to back up what you're saying, I believe. So that's how I approached my career. If I didn't know something, I went and learned. I went back to school to get to know what I need to know. It's very important to identify what you don't know. In that way, it leads you to what you know. So that's what led me through to where I am in terms of career development. I didn't want it to be said that you are not qualified enough for the position. So my aim was get yourself qualified, learn what you can learn, and then do what you're passionate about. And if you're doing that, do it well, do it excellently so that it benefits as many people as possible.
So it's about bringing that credibility.
Exactly. Credibility is important. I'll give you an example where we went to a meeting in Rwanda and the Minister of Health there, she's a no-nonsense lady, did not want to talk to anybody else who did not bring credibility according to her. So anyone who did not introduce themselves as a doctor so-and-so was kicked out of the meeting. I was so glad to be a doctor that day.
Wow.
Oh man, you actually remind me of an experience I had with a client now that I transition into consulting. So I went to speak to this client and I was coached that, look, you don't have a lot of time with clients. So, reduce the amount of time you spend on your introductions and get to the point so that you can have a bit more time with discussion. So there I was, gave literally a 30-second introduction about myself. And I went into the presentation, and I think I was on the third slide, and the client stopped me and said, "So are you an engineer?" You know, and it was like, okay, so you've not been listening to anything I've been saying until then. And I realized it is actually a credibility question that was really trying to find. So it's interesting, and maybe as we go forward, I'd like maybe to elaborate on how are other ways that people can build credibility. I think we understand the experience, we understand the studying, but how do you build that credibility for people who are trying to transition into new spaces and pivot in their careers? Dan?
I think let's answer that. I think that's a loaded question, and then I'll ask my question.
All right.
It is very loaded. And I think credibility, I agree with you, as you've said, it's not just your papers or your work experience. I think it's your attitude. It's how you approach a challenge or how you approach a job. So first of all, show up hopefully looking a bit professional, and do some homework around who you're going to see, so that you have an understanding of who's going to face you when you get there. But I think also it also helps to be respectful. I mean, I always think that people respond well when you treat them well and are respectful in how you approach them. It has never helped anyone to be so pompous or arrogant about their own achievements and not looking and in a way overlooking the person in front of you. So I think over and above that, to get credibility is always show up, be responsive. I mean, even if you don't have an answer, respond and say, you know what you're saying, I've heard. Give me a moment, let me go and do my homework, and I'll come back and give you a solution. I mean, right now I'm in a consultancy firm. It's very fast paced. It's very results orientated. What we've learned is that our clients, they don't want you to show them criterias and recommendations, or, tell them what the problem is, as most consultants usually do. They know the problem. What they want is a solution. So you go in with that in mind, go in with an open mind to interrogate with the end of getting to a solution that suits your client. So all of that, creates credibility. And one thing that I also think is important is be consistent. Be consistent. Treat every client as important. Same thing as treating every patient as important. Someone can come to you with hypertension, and another one comes with a sore thumb, but they're all patients, and you need to treat them with dignity and respect. So I take that approach with my work, even with the Department of Health. I mean, you mentioned credibility. I'm a technical advisor, so the first thing they'll ask for is all the things we spoke about, first and foremost, and to get comfortable, for the department to get comfortable with us as a team. I'm not going to just speak about myself because I work in a team. We had to really be consistent in the way we presented ourselves. We had to ensure that they had a positive and an encouraging experience when they were dealing with us. So that's how we approached it, or I would approach it that way.
Yeah, before Dan, you ask your question, I would just like to highlight something, make a comment. And I think around being honest about the things that you don't know. I came across a book called The Trusted Advisor, and I managed to attend a seminar where one of the authors, Robert Greene, spoke about when you speak to a client, when you're in a situation, you don't have to know all the answers. And sometimes it's okay to say you don't know, because saying you don't know does more for your credibility than pretending to know and looking like a fool, So thanks for bringing that up. Done.
Okay, so now I have a question. Now I've got a comment because we talked about credibility. I'm going to share a simple framework around credibility. It actually talks about capability, which is kind of what kind of you need to show every time you're in front of people. The framework is called BEAKS. It literally is BEAKS, BEAKS. What it means is that credibility is driven by behavior, which is reinforced by your experience, and which is facilitated by your ability and backed up by your knowledge and executed through your skills. So it's like 5 words. And you always talk about the reason why people, if you think about it, and I'll just give a generic scenario. Every time somebody wants to kind of bring you down because of the way they perceive you, they will use your behavior. That's why behavior sounds. In fact, they say credibility behavior is like 60%. Though you walk into a room, you're disorganized, they don't know your skills, they don't know your experience, they'll come and say, you know, we're incompetent. These guys are incompetent, they don't know what they're doing, just because of the behavior. So just to really reiterate that the skills are there, and also the knowledge, which is your qualification, needs to come through. But the biggest one which comes in front, which we always judge people, is their behavior. So it's called BIGS. It's a very good framework to just look at capability and stuff. And if you go and do a self-reflection on BIGS, you realize how many things you're not credible, because you look at the way you behaved in a certain situation, you'll be like, just on that, it discredits me as being a credible person. But anyway, I thought I should share that because we're actually talking about it. I was going to ask a question, but I want us to go into the question, but I'm going to try to summarize it. So you were a medical doctor, you've been given an opportunity where somebody just identified you, put you in a program, and then you go and work for this company, a consultancy firm, and you've worked in these roles which look like you actually didn't have experience with. So for people who are trying to pivot their career, could be upwards and sideways, what are the things you think they should be doing right now which somebody will be able to identify? Because a lot of people who come to the show and who come to the webinar and they're looking for the nuggets and the advice or the emotions they have to go through just so that they can move upwards. What are the things which made that lady just come and say, look, you say, yes, hard work. Fantastic. Are there things where you can come and say, look, these are the opportunities you need to capitalize on? You mentioned things like mentorship, but what do those things play? Family. How could you leverage those to be identified as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, what you're asking is very pertinent here, because I think had I not taken on or identified some of those, those, how will I call them? Like levers, I probably would not have achieved what I have. So what I think is important here, first and foremost, is to be curious about things. And then the other big thing is talk to strangers, guys. Talk to strangers. You'll be sitting next to someone who will offer you a job and you don't even know it. I feel like once you've kind of decided in what direction you want to go, I've always wanted to help people. So being a doctor was one way of doing it, but then also having another purpose of saying, well, I'm helping an individual. Let me help a population. Have an idea of where you want to go and just start, researching around it, being curious around it. Bounce your ideas with friends. I mean, I have quite a good circle of friends, even in Zambia before I went for my MPH. It's a circle of friends who thought, oh, Lisa, that's a good idea. That might lead you to your end goal. So bounce ideas off of people, ask the right questions, and don't feel like don't feel like going after something is people will look at you and, oh, she's too ambitious, or he's too ambitious, or who does she think she is, trying to do an MBA and all of that? How many more letters does she want at the end of her name? I've had that being said about me, but be true to yourself. Go for what you want, and don't be afraid to ask for help. I mean, as a married woman in Zambia or in Africa, that leaving a husband with kids, like one was 1.5 years and one was 6 months, is a big deal. Not many husbands will accept that. And also having a husband who's supportive. I mean, he paid for the MBA, and I'm not ashamed to say it, because had he not paid for that, I probably would not have financed it myself. So that type of support and understanding and discussion with your family group, with your family and friends, really does encourage. And you find out that actually I can pursue what I want to do because there's people out there to help me and to guide me. So those are the things I think I wanted to point out.
Dan, there's a message there from BI Tech admin saying "Viva to husbands that pay for MBAs." I don't know.
Dan?
I don't know on which side of the fence that you fall. I thought I was just gonna put it out there, Dan.
I think we're some WhatsApp group with Lisa's husband. I'm taking care of a baby. I'm still taking care of a baby who was 7 months too, while somebody was doing their MBA. So I'm kind of 1 year of it. I think got some rhythm.
There we go.
But to be fair, Dan, my husband also did an MBA and I had to also take care of the household. So it was tit for tat.
Okay. Equal rights. Okay, man, I think let's get into the questions. Let's go to the questions of the poll. Do we have the poll results? What are the polls showing?
Look, okay, there we go. So the first question in the team, do you encourage diversity of thought? Yes, this is a very open team. We have very open individuals here. The second one says, which of the following is not a characteristic of servant leadership? Empathy, hindsight, awareness. And hindsight seems to be taking the lead. Third one, do you ask instead of tell people what to do? Ask. So it seems as if we've got lots of servant leaders. Dan, you want to take the
like I'm really shocked. I mean, question number 4 says active listening. I'm a coach, and hey, man, our certification was tough. I mean, all the people who got kind of certified didn't know anything about active listening. So it's impressive that 93% of the people are active listeners. This is really good. And the 5th one says, in the workplace, do you focus on people development? Look, I don't know if there's any comments you want to make, Doctor, on the results. Me, I'm just fascinated that people ask a lot of questions and are active listeners. This is very impressive.
Yeah, I'm also impressed with these answers. There's a lot of servant leaders out there for sure.
Fantastic. Good. Maybe Monday we can go to the questions.
Let's do it. The first one comes from Gladstone Chazibana, who says, hi, Lisa. How did you know it was the right time? And I guess it's the right time to make the move, right? To transition from your clinical career into what you're doing now.
That's a good question. How did I know it was the right time? I think a lot of things, particularly for my MPH, a lot of things were happening around in my life at the time. Having left University Teaching Hospital, I really didn't want to go back to the hospital because that was the solution should I specialize in a clinical route. And I also felt I really wanted to get more into, like I said, into public health, population health and health systems. So, you know, what made me make that decision? I just thought I needed change, first and foremost. I knew I didn't want to be far from my family. So South Africa was quite okay for me. And I had experience working in South Africa before. During my medical studies, I was an elective student here. So I was comfortable with the health system. And also what was very important, I think, was to make sure that I had a support system to leave my kids behind. Had I not had that, I probably would not have made the shift. So yeah, the thought process that I was going through during that time.
Good. I've answered Portia's question. They asked, where are you from? So I said, you're from Zambia. I'm going to answer Lulu. So I have to announce, we need to do the research. There's this Lulu person who's been on all webinars. So there's something about the webinars which has brought them there. So thank you very much, Lulu, for coming to all 27, 28 of them, week on week. Maybe it gives me the indication this person might even be jobless because they just have a lot of time to listen to us. How about you? We figure out who Lulu is. But anyway, Lulu is asking to say, what career advice would you give your 26-year-old self?
What career advice would I give a 26-year-old self?
Yeah, version of yourself. Yeah, like you're looking back in hindsight. What are the things which stand out, which would be like, I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah, and what would you do differently?
I would advise myself not to sweat the small stuff. I tend to linger around things that are not important in the bigger picture of things. And they used to really get me down. I'm getting better at addressing those. And I call those distractors or detractors, whatever the correct word is. But they kind of remove you from focusing on where you want to go. So I'll tell myself that. Also, I would tell myself to be a bit more brave and bold and more assertive in getting some of the things that I wanted to get. I'm generally not an assertive person. I've also had to learn that. So yeah, and the other thing I think I'll tell a 26-year-old is be ready to do your homework. You don't just show up and think you're going to be a CEO. There's a journey to get there. and you have to pay your dues. So that's what I'll tell my 26-year-old self.
Fantastic. The next question comes from Mihlali Ntoy. Hey, Mihlali, how are you doing? I worked with Mihlali at Accenture, one of the brilliant young ladies coming up. Mihlali says, how does an NGO environment compare to a corporate environment?
Okay, that's a good question, actually. There are similarities because I'm still working in the HIV area. So policy and all that type of thing remains the same. However, what is different with working in a consultancy from an NGO is that most of our projects are short-term within a consultancy, and you need to work quickly. It's fast-paced. You need to work quickly. You need to show your results quickly. Whereas in an NGO, you're probably on a 5-year program. So you have time to build it up and show impact after 5 years. Luckily, the program I'm working on now that's funded by the Gates Foundation is a 3-year project. I'm actually we'll be thinking about closing out next year. So it's more or less a long-term project or program that I could at least show some reasonable outcomes at the end of it. So I would say it's the pace, number one, that is quite different. And being in a consultancy environment, you also have to deal a lot with a lot of stakeholders and manage those and ensure that all your clients have a good experience with the organization. I also lead the Sustainable Health Systems service line in the health practice at Genesis. It is a business on its own, so I have to generate revenue. I have to be cost efficient. I have to ensure quality, and I have to deal with clients and make sure that the work is coming in. So business development is another area that is key for my work.
Good. Okay, so the next question is from Tumi. They say servant leadership can be difficult for those already in positions of power. How do we encourage more compassionate leadership from the bottom? So I'm assuming this is upward management when you're not in a position of power.
How do we encourage servant leadership when you're not in a position of power?
Yes.
I think we said it before, it's through your behavior. You have to walk the talk. You have to behave according to the servant leadership philosophy. You have to be, and I say leaders, position has nothing to do with leadership. You can be a lower cadre worker in an organization, but you are a born leader. You have innate qualities of leadership that allows you to lead. So if you are in that position, you just basically speak out. I mean, most leaders are recognized already as when they're children because they just have something in them that make them lead. But to lead in a way that is giving and serving, I think needs a bit of a conscious effort and always reminding yourself that it's not just about me. What I need to put the next person into perspective and understand what their needs are to move forward.
Fantastic. The next question comes from Pumzile Kumalo. And I think Dan Pumzile might have left a comment for you in the chat.
Actually, just responding to it to say, sorry, actually I read it wrongly. So we're gonna ask the doctor at the end.
All right. So Pumzile says, hi, Dr. Mulenga. Thank you for sharing your amazing story. I'm inspired. You mentioned that you believe in collaboration, but what do you do when people did not buy into your idea?
Yeah, it gets very frustrating, actually, particularly if you're in the type of work that I do where I'm trying to sell policy and ensure that everyone buys in and you have people who are just skeptical and don't get your idea. I think you have to be creative in the ways of communicating what you want to communicate. Active listening is important, like we've mentioned. First of all, listen to what the other person is saying. What do they want? What motivates them? What incentivizes them? Put all of that together and use that to try and move them and persuade them gently into the position that you want them to be. It isn't easy, but yeah, you need to, it can be a lot of work, and you need to do your homework about the person, your client, your stakeholder, to understand them better so that you can better meet their needs.
Cool. Okay, so the next question also comes from Pumzile. She says, she's talking about failure. She says, how do you define failure and what have you learned from it?
Yeah, failure, I don't really like the word failure because it kind of insinuates that you can't come out of it or you can't bounce back from failure. But failure is critical to learning. I feel that, if you haven't gone through failure, you need to know how to fail gracefully as well as how to win gracefully. So failure is very, very key. And you learn from your mistakes, hopefully, and you understand that next time I will avoid these pitfalls when I pursue this particular idea. So I think that having an attitude, having a different attitude towards failure is very important, not to look at it as the end of the road. I mean, if we all did that, we wouldn't be here. How many times have we been knocked down and we've gotten up again, dusted yourself up, and you continue? So yeah, it's very, very important to have that attitude of, yes, I've failed, but it's not the end of the road. There's people who can help me. How do I get up, and how do I keep going?
All right. Before we go to the next question, I'm seeing some comments here from some of your people on the YouTube channel. I think it's Mwansa Njelesani Kaira saying, so inspiring, Balisa. And
Thanks,
Hope
Mwansa.
saying, so proud of you, Balisa. Keep flying the flag. The next question is coming from Saran Shimbi, who says, are you satisfied with your work versus family life balance?
I have not always been satisfied with that. I am now. When the children were younger and I had to work and be away from the home quite a lot, I was always guilty. I wished I could have spent so much time with them. But I think they turned out okay, regardless. But now I'm satisfied. Before, I couldn't find a correct, I don't know if I should say balance, but I found that I was working too hard and neglecting some of the needs from my children and perhaps my husband as well. So I think, knowing what I know now, I could have said, I'll switch off the laptop at 5 and then let me focus on family, because you have to create clear boundaries. Work is work, family time is family time. I think this has been made more apparent now with COVID-19, where we're working from home. I tell you, sometimes I'm sitting on my laptop and then I realize, oh my goodness, dinner is being served and I need to sit with my family and eat. So you have to really be careful how you balance that.
I'm seeing questions which are kind of sort of, what is it, kind of we can group, because I see Anonymous and Portia, they're kind of the one I brushed off are talking about where to now, kind of where are you going. I would want you to kind of end with that. So probably we'll leave those to kind of the last comment. And then I'm seeing Cynthia talking to, also actually Cynthia and Anonymous are actually talking to a setback. So I'm not sure if they want to kind of just iterate kind of your idea of failure or the biggest setback you felt, and maybe how have you overcome that? Maybe you could comment to that and it will cover both questions.
Yeah, and I think the biggest failure, not really a failure, one of the things that really hit me hard academically was when my thesis was rejected. It may seem like, oh, come on, you can just go back and rework it. But I really thought I did a great job, particularly because the topic was I was so passionate about the topic, servant leadership and HIV. And I had gone to Zambia. I did my research in Zambia with the mining community. So I had put a lot of investment in it. You had to charter a plane to get to Kalumbira and all those rural mine areas to do your research. So coming back thinking I've written this fantastic piece of work and being told, hey, it's not good enough. This is what we're looking at, go back. I actually probably was in a state of depression for a couple of weeks. And I lamented and spoke to my friends to say, how do I move forward? And what do? You pick yourself up, acknowledge, first of all, I ran through the comments that were given to me, and I acknowledged that actually they may have a point here. This was not clear. This needed to be rephrased and so on. So once you acknowledge your part in that failure or challenge, then you can start building it up. So yeah, that's one of the downsides that I've experienced so far.
All right. Then the next question is it's from your biggest fan. Rapi Mukhorosi says, hi, Dr. Mulenga. Would it not have been easier to work directly for a public institution, example, the National Department of Health, as opposed to working on a public policy development through external consultancies and NGOs? How do you ensure that you achieve the impact that you seek?
Yeah, good questions. I think there were three. Yes, it would have been great working directly with the National Department of Health, an impact in that sense, but I don't see myself as working outside of them. All of my careers, from the first job I had as a program manager with the Catholic Medical Missions Board, I found myself in a technical working group with the Department of Health. So I was contributing, though from an external position, but my work has always been in close consultation with the Department of Health. So even through CDC and PEPFAR, I had to liaise with the department. We had to align all of our decisions and strategies. So most of it was actually assisting the department. I myself, obviously being a Zambian, there were also issues of, you have to have the right work permit. You have to have, a registration with the Health Professions Council if you needed to see patients and all of that, which I attempted to do, but there are obstacles. So the route that looked easier, if I may use that word, was to provide that technical assistance to the department, but it's not only the department, it's also through to the funders and other key developmental stakeholders that we deal with in my work. So yeah, I hope I've answered the question.
Dan, yes. Second last question, and Manda can end with kind of the so what next, which answers Gladstone and Portia's question. I'll ask Reisha, I hope I've pronounced the name correctly. You mentioned the key role your mentor played in your career. How would you advise a person to approach a potential mentor?
Okay, I always think I have been mentored and I also mentor. So I always feel that it is the responsibility of the potential mentee to approach the mentor. I feel that sometimes you have to identify who is playing the role that you admire or you want to be in, or you feel they are in a better position to advise you, and approach them. Like I said, talk to strangers. Sometimes it's difficult, but use whatever you can and identify a mentor that you can resonate with. It just so happened that my boss became my mentor, and it was mainly because of her attitude towards me as well, her willingness and openness to let me into her world and to teach me not only, clinical stuff, but worldly stuff as well, how to be a good mother, putting family first and all those types of things. So I think it is really important that you take that first step in identifying a mentor.
Great. Doc, so there have been a couple of questions about where to next. You've done such a lot. You've worked in a number of places, had some amazing impact. Where to for Dr. Lisa?
Well, in the near future, I'll continue working at Genesis. I do enjoy my work, trying to build up the sustainable health system work stream. But I really do, at heart, I really feel I should go back to being an entrepreneur. And see what I can achieve there. And obviously what business I'm thinking about all has to do with health and wellness. So yeah, I think that's what's coming in the near future. I don't see myself going to school anytime soon, but I do want the experiences of, trying something new, being an entrepreneur and contributing to the world. I'm contributing to the society that I live in. So yeah, that's my next move going forward.
Doc, thank you very much. We did start, by the way, just out of curiosity, we did start having the conversation of kind of where to next. It was a very interesting one. I couldn't help I put in my coaching hat and I was like, actually, let's just stop it. But I think it's
But you promised that you will coach me for that. So I'm coming to you soon.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Looking forward to working with you on your kind of your pivots whenever you decide to make your pivots. So, and also just thank you very much for coming. Short notice, somebody we just met, very exciting. The rapport was brought very quickly. Thank you very much for actually coming.
I'd like to thank you and Dan and Manda as well. Thanks for having me. I'm quite honored.
A true 70 indeed, huh?
Yeah, coming to give supporting us in what we are doing good.
Yeah.
So we're always going to put a poster of the next speaker, but the next speaker has kind of dropped us twice now. And then they've kind of sent me a message while I'm talking here that I'm going to do it. Now, I don't know if I'm going to introduce him, but I'm just going to say this. This next speaker wanted to take over my best friendship with Manda. So that's why I'm just gonna leave it. For the people who know him, that's why maybe we've been very forgiving to him. But he works as an executive at one of the biggest, digital company in America. He's the head of global operations, one of our very good friends. Like I said, he thought that he was overtaking Manda somehow in the ranking. But maybe let's wait and see if he confirms, because he looks like he depends on which side of the bed he wakes up for him to commit. But please join us next week. We're still going to bring a leader in our network who's going to come and really try to inspire you. As we wind up the year, I think we're going towards where we're just going to consolidate and come and say, I think December might just be a consolidation of what we've learned, who came into the show, what they discussed with us, and really just reflect on people, the impact the show has actually made.
Definitely, definitely. Dan, we're looking forward to it. So everyone, please enjoy your weekend. Stay safe. Remember, we are still dealing with a pandemic. So keep your social distancing, wear your mask, and let's fight this pandemic. And hopefully soon it'll be something of the past. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.